Hello there and welcome to my reaction to Game Theory, FNAF, the Ultimate Timeline. Um, I've recently watched, what is it called? Oh no, Security Breach, right? The one where you play as a kid and it's Gregory. I must do it gritty. I don't remember. You play as Gregory and then there's the child as the child and then you have Freddy helps you along the way or whatnot. Um, and I've only recently seen it, and I didn't get curious. I kind of went for it because of this video, and I think three next videos that are part of the same Ultimate Timeline game theory thing, and yeah, it's just very interesting to me because of how weirdly vast this story is. If any of this like actually true, actually what Scott something. I knew his name at some point. Came up with when he made the first game, then the second, and whatnot. I've been watching these theories for a while when the first games were coming out because it was kind of interesting to see where it was going. But then I got tired of it. And if this, the ultimate timeline, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the last. Maybe that the whole story is now here. Or maybe next year there will be a video titled something like "I was wrong," and then it'll be 3 years long and it's just a new theory. I don't know. Uh, but yeah, MedPat is an insane person, and let's watch him talk about the lore of Five Nights at Freddy's, shall we? Like, subscribe, become member. Let's begin.
Today we end the torment. 19 books, 11 games,
Why is this
8
video the loudest
whole
one I've seen today?
years, all leading to this moment. The ultimate FNAF timeline is finally complete. The pieces are in place for us. Now all we have to do is put this story of tragedy, jealousy, and loss.
Also,
The books, 11 games,
19 books. Like 11 games, I understand. There was like the one, the two, the three, the world, and like all of those. But then 19 books?
8 whole years, all
And that's
leading to this moment.
all
The
in
ultimate
8
FNAF
years.
timeline is finally complete. The
Is
pieces
it though?
are in place for us. Now all we have to do is put this story of tragedy, jealousy, and loss back together. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that feels like a kid revealing the class project that he's been working on all year. Except here, it's the class project that I've been working on for the past decade of my life. This one is big, my friends, and I gotta admit, kinda nervous. I haven't attempted a timeline video on this franchise since 2018. Back in the days when Mike was the crying child, Afton coming back was actually a surprise, and Fazgoo wasn't a phrase I ever thought I'd have to utter. But since the last time I did something like this, we've had 3 more massive games, the death and revival of the FNAF. The last time I did something like this, we've had 3 more
Help Wanted is the VR one, right? I've watched that one. I should have said that I've never played any Five Nights at Freddy's. I never had any interest in playing them. Not because they're horror games, I'm fine with that. AR? I thought that was like maybe sister location or something, but no, that's Five Nights at Freddy's AR, special delivery. Oh wait, yeah, Mark played it. I also watched that one. I think, at least partially. Well, anyway.
Massive games, the death and revival of the FNAF movie, and more robot kids than you can shake a staff bot at. It is exhausting trying to keep track of this whole franchise, which honestly is why I'm here today. The lore at this point is complicated. It is full of speculation and theories.
Be like that when it's 19 books, 11 games.
To talk about this franchise moving forward into the future, it's time to reveal my current working FNAF timeline. But just before I do, I just want to explain a couple of things. First, this timeline is massive. Seriously, it is
again,
huge.
obviously.
This thing towers over any video project we have ever done on the channel. But when you look at the totality of this franchise, the story of FNAF really boils down to the story of one man, William Afton. His successes, his failures, his rise to becoming co-owner of one of the most successful restaurant franchises in the world, and his eventual fall to the monsters he helped to create, only to then be reborn in a new digital form later. That's why I've decided to split this timeline into 3 main chunks.
Oh, he's the one that always comes back at different... I
business
can
started
remember
and how it came into
shit.
being, the Afton era, Williams' decades-long murder spree, and post-Purple Guy. Basically modern FNAF. Everything that happens after the Pizzeria Simulator fire. And because there are lots of new big revelations in this thing that seemingly come out of nowhere,
But then Security Breach has Springtrap. I think that's the name of the one. In it.
as well as just points I want to talk about further, I decided to dedicate one episode to each chunk. I originally wanted it to be one seamless, continuous video, but it just felt incomplete without some sort of explanation at the end of each one. Once this whole thing's done, I promise I'm going to merge all the narrative bits into one massive video so you can just skip my explanations. But for now, this just felt like the best, most satisfying, most complete
I think it's better to digest it this way as well.
Still about the story, the broad
and if you want the viewer,
to make sure that you guys know that I'm
you specifically, you the one watching now,
not only am I discussing some of the more controversial bits at the
I'll
end
do
of
the
chunk,
part 2 and part 3.
putting in a handy little graphic
And
in
part
the
4 if that's a thing.
corner of the screen, which will show thumbnails, video titles, books, and any other citations that we need throughout the video. So if you wish to understand that specific statement in more detail, you know exactly where we've taken it from. That way you can look into those details for yourself. So sit back, grab some popcorn, or your pitchforks if you're the type to get upset when I say something controversial, and make sure that you subscribe, since this is
I trust you wholeheartedly.
Back to a few times in order to fully dissect. Without any more waiting, I present to you the story of a loving, obsessive father who slowly descended into madness, and along the way discovered the secret to eternal life. Our story begins not in the 1980s, or even in the 1970s, but all the way back in the 1930s.
Oh, that's gonna be a while before the bite of 87.
And people were in desperate need of cheap entertainment, especially in Utah, one of the states hit hardest, fourth highest unemployment in the nation, and full of transients. People looking for work in Salt Lake.
This is real story, right?
On to find their fortunes out in California. People were tired and they were hungry, but as they traveled, there was one thing that could lift their spirits: a simple roadside attraction called Fredbear's Singin' Show. The ads were plastered all over town, featuring an animated bear drawn in the
I mean, that's pretty much how anime was created,
style for
or
characters
manga.
at the time. He resembled cartoons like Mickey Mouse, Felix the Cat,
It's not the same
Betty Boop.
time.
It immediately said that this,
It's
Fredbear,
after
was a
Second
place
World War.
where you could bring the family. And the price, honestly, couldn't be beat. For 50 cents, you could get food and entertainment as you watched the local trained real-life
God, what
dancing
did
bear
inflation
perform on
do?
stage. Normally, you only got to see dancing bears at large traveling circuses like Barnum and Bailey, where the tickets would go for about $1. That's $1 without food. But this was a smaller show, like the type from the
Damn, this is a steal.
Robbins Brothers, where tickets would sell for just a mere 50 cents. Watching that bear do tricks on stage brought a glimmer of joy at a time when so much was wrong with the world. The simple show would go on for years, bringing happiness to hundreds of travelers passing through looking for a quick meal. But it left a permanent impression on one little boy, capturing his imagination in a way that nothing else had. One little boy named Billy. That was his nickname at least, but his parents liked to call him William Afton. The bear could dance, could sing. For decades, William dreamed of recreating that moment of bringing a musical bear to life, but how? William was smart, without a doubt, and he had a keen mind for business, but he wasn't the most creative. How do you make a singing, dancing bear come to life? The best he could do was using rudimentary costumes. William was inspired by the work of Walt Disney, who throughout the 50s and 60s was pioneering the use of mascot suits throughout his theme park. The big innovation? Suits with 5 fingers. This allowed the performers wearing the suits to use their natural arms and hands to interact with the guests, as opposed to the older models where the arms would just hang limply by their sides. Finally, with a simple mascot suit, he would be able to realize his childhood dream. He would be able to bring Fredbear to life. To appeal to the kids, and for copyright reasons, he changed Fredbear from a realistic brown animal to a cartoonish yellow bear with a purple hat
golden
and bow tie.
one?
But feeling like one character wasn't enough, he added another friend, a yellow rabbit with a purple vest and matching tie named Bonnie the Bunny. While Fredbear was certainly his first love, Bonnie was extra special because that was his. It was an original character that he had created from scratch. And I do mean scratch. William's hand-sewn costumes were rough with seams and stitches visibly showing, but it was the best that he could do. And you know what? It was just enough. Bonnie and Fredbear would perform on stage to small but enthusiastic crowds. Finally, he was able to deliver fantasy and fun to all the kids, delighting and inspiring them in the exact way that he had been delighted and inspired so many years ago. And things could have ended there. That could have been the end to his story. It could have been perfect had it not been for one thing. Other people saw the success of his idea and they wanted in. Enter Chica's Party World, a rival restaurant starring performing animal characters. His idea, except they did it better. William may have been the first, but
Oh,
obviously
no.
he wasn't the best. It hurt the
He got
prideful William Afton
Pokemon'd.
to admit it, but this restaurant was able to do the thing that he always wanted.
I'm saying that because Digimon came first. Pokemon is kind of the same thing, but it became more popular because I think they did it better. I don't know.
Wanted to do. Make the animals
I don't
actually
care,
come to life.
to be
All
honest.
the performers in this restaurant were robots, simple metal skeletons that were powered by battery packs, but all of them able to freely turn and talk
Oh.
and dance on their own, no human required. It
So
was
he
like
didn't create
magic that
robots, he
came
just
from the
created
mind
suits.
of a brilliant
Oh.
creator named Henry Emily. This Henry, in some small way, had been able to harness the power of life itself. Afton admired him. He was
Well.
jealous, to be sure, but he also looked upon this man with awe. Off to one side of Chica's Party World was a small cabaret stage featuring an elephant magician. On the other, a hippo known to ramble on and on. That one was more of a joke for the parents, but it was the
Okay,
main stage
I
that
remember
was for
those. I don't
kids.
remember
A
which game they
rocking
appeared
band
in
of characters
first.
featuring a yellow chicken thing with a southern drawl named Chica, backed by a band of other country-themed characters, including a pig with a banjo, an upbeat frog from the local swimming hole, and a brown bear with a heavy southern accent. Wait, a bear? But bears were his animals.
No,
Why not a cow
thief.
or a horse, something to fit the country
Horns.
theme a bit better. Why did it have to be a bear? And adding insult to injury,
That
they
is
had the nerve to
unbearable.
call this thing Ned Bear, a direct copy of his own Fred Bear.
Whoops, that's gonna leave a mark.
No, that was not okay. Afton's jealous admiration turned to hardened bitterness.
Probably felt
a bitterness
unbearable.
that would only grow over the next couple of years as families continued to choose Chica's Party World over Fred Bear's. William just couldn't compete with the appeal of the robots. Eventually, his restaurant would go bankrupt, only to get bailed out by, of course, Henry Emily. Another insult, another humiliation that William wouldn't soon forget. 1979. Despite
There we
being
go.
bitter, Afton couldn't deny
Unless
that
I
what
missed
came
a year
next was
before.
a period of
At
massive
least now I know
success and
where it
expansion.
is.
With the two franchises now merged into one, it was the best of both worlds. Afton's ideas with Henry's robotic expertise. The two men decided to launch under a new name, Fredbear's Family Diner, a pizza chain that would
Oh,
eventually come to
okay.
feature a mix of humans in performing suits as well as on-stage animatronics. They decided to stick with Fredbear as the headliner, considering the yellow bear was easily identifiable as a brand and because he was the original performing animal mascot. Afton appreciated
Top dog.
this new restaurant would also
Top
see a mix
bear.
of characters as the two franchises merged into one, with Pig Patch and Happy Frog performing right alongside Fredbear and Bonnie. And as part of this one big Fredbear family, they even got themselves official merch that were released, ranging from masks to magnets.
The crappy Mr. Hippo fridge magnet?
That said, not
I actually
all
have
characters
no idea when security breach happens. It can't be 79, can it? I mean, it's not our universe. It just feels like technology is too advanced, especially when you look at, like, I don't know, the first Five Nights at Freddy's that's supposedly is after a lot of others,
were
whatever.
winners. The reception to some characters was just
Trying to understand.
mediocre. So they faded away into the dumpster, storage units, and retro budget tech stores of lost nostalgia, waiting for their chance to step back into the limelight if and when a headliner went out of commission. Others, though, would fare much better, like a new Pirate Fox, as well as a blue guitar-playing variant of the
Oh,
yellow
Pirate's
Bonnie
Nickel.
Bunny. Ultimately, the franchise would get so big, it would spawn its own cartoon show, Fredbear and Friends. Business was
1983.
booming. In the end, Fredbear and Bonnie's popularity would be so strong that they would be able to support the Fredbear's Family Diner franchise all on their own, while also spinning off a new sister location dedicated to their friends. In 1983, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza launched, giving a dedicated home to all this new supporting cast of characters: Chica the Chicken, Bonnie the Blue Bunny, Foxy the Pirate, and of course
that's
the
the
headliner
first
of Brown
FNAF.
Freddy Fazbear. Business was good, and Afton was happy, mostly. It did bother him that the one original character that he created, the one that he himself played,
Golden.
and Bonnie, got
Oh.
passed over for inclusion in that cartoon show. The only character in the roster of regulars to get ignored for the show, but other than that, things were going smoothly. He had himself a wife, 2 sons, a daughter, he had a
Purple
thriving
one.
business, and best of all,
Purple
he was
wife.
able to learn the craft of robotics from the man that he both loved and hated, Henry. Together, they were constantly pushing the limits of what these characters could do. Because it was quick and easy, new characters
having
introduced
children
into
into
the
them.
roster would be given a simple hand-sewn
Or
suit
whatever.
with 5 fingers that any performer could wear. Eventually, Henry would design one of his signature animatronics for that character, utilizing a divided mouth with either a hinged or sliding jaw design. This was the first generation of animatronics. But why stop there? Afton had big ideas. What if the animatronics weren't just locked to the stage, but could freely roam the restaurant and interact with the kids? What if
No.
his mascot suits
What if they
could
bite someone's
become
frontal
animatronics?
lobe?
What if you could use more than just rigid metallic skeletons? Why not experiment with tubes and wires that would give the animatronics fluidity and flexibility while still providing structure? The possibilities for this technology were endless. Afton fell in love with robotics. He had started with a dream of bringing one simple singing bear to life.
So far,
but with
it all
robots,
actually
he
makes
had stumbled
sense.
across the tools that gave him the ability
I don't know why, I thought it would be more
control life
incoherent.
itself. And thanks to Henry, he was
But it's
practically
MadPat's video, so-
speedrunning his way to an engineering degree. And while William wouldn't admit it out loud, one other thing that kept pushing him forward was the desire to beat his former rival, to prove himself smarter and more capable, to surpass the man who everyone else considered to be a visionary genius. But pride cometh before the fall, and tragedy was about to strike. Okay, so that
Yeah, right.
brings us to the end of part 1 of the story.
Oh,
That said, at
okay.
the end of each of these chunks, I want to break down some
So
of
I'm
the
guessing
logical
part
leaps that I
2 is
made,
where the
since
games
more
start.
narrative format doesn't give me much of a chance to justify a lot of the big decisions. And admittedly, there are some large leaps in here. Let's just start off with Fredbear's Singin' Show, shall we? We know, based
Sure.
on the retro poster that was hidden in Security Breach, that at least at one point, Fredbear was an actual bear. And like I called out in that narrative segment, dancing bear shows were a real form of entertainment. The only problem is that, timing-wise, none of our main characters would be the people in charge of that business in the 30s and a series of pizza restaurants in the 80s without them just being extremely old. Best case scenario, if Afton's running the Singin' Show when he's 18, that still puts him at nearly 70 when the first pizzeria opens and his murder spree begins.
Seems
It just
fine
doesn't
to
make
me.
a lot of logical sense because
Why?
he doesn't become immortal until his first death in Springtrap. That's why I suspect that Fredbear's Singin' Show was either a family
first
business
death.
that Afton then carried on to
There's
a
incoherence I
generation,
thought
or
about.
something that he saw as a kid and just wanted to recreate when he grew up. The Fredbear Singin' Show thing also starts laying the groundwork for some of the core elements of this story. That Freddy's was a place of fantasy and fun, and that Afton, despite eventually falling to become the heartless serial killer and mad scientist that we know him as, began as someone with good intentions and a love of entertaining kids.
I wonder if
He
Scott
wanted to
just
bring
watches
things to life from the
theory
very
videos and then
beginning,
makes
a
the
theme that
games
recurs a lot
based
for him
on
throughout the
that.
rest of the franchise. Next up, let's talk about those mascot costumes. One thing that I keep going back to is the design of Glitch Trap. It's a handcrafted suit. You can see the
Glitch
seams
Trap.
and everything. It even has 5 fingers for the performer's hands. It is very much not a Springtrap suit. This is something much more rudimentary. It came at a time before animatronics were a part of the story. That's why I suspect that it was actually the first, predating literally everything. It's also a suit that is very personal to Afton. He put his digital consciousness in that form. It's his personal avatar. It's
Did
the
he?
way
Okay.
that he sees himself. There's also
Glitch
a whole
Trap,
separate
I don't know
discussion
what
to be
that
had
is.
here about the habits and
I
rituals
don't think
of
I've ever
serial
seen
killers.
this
So the
one.
fact that he's choosing to lure kids and kill them in this particular suit actually says a lot about his emotional attachment to it. So while Fredbear seems to have started as someone else's creation, Golden Bonnie was uniquely Williams.
So it is Golden
Connection.
Bonnie.
And that's not all.
Okay.
In this whole franchise, only one set of characters have themselves 5 fingers, the Nightmares. Even Golden Freddy, Fredbear, was a 5-fingered wearable suit at one point in the story, as we see in this shot from the graphic novel, before he, like everyone else, was turned
course,
into
from
an
the graphic
animatronic.
novel.
This seems to imply that all of the main characters had similar wearable mascot outfits at least at one point in time, and that whoever has
Possibly.
had FNAF 4 Nightmares,
They would have been
if
created
they
as
are
is.
Nightmares, something that we'll touch on in part 2, saw those mascot suits
Can't wait.
specifically. Lastly, we have to talk about the elephant in the room. The literal elephant, Orville Elephant, as well as the rest of the mediocre melodies.
Orville?
For a while now, I've suspected that the mediocre melodies played a much more important role in the story than just being a bunch more animatronics to fill out the roster. Especially Ned Bear, which is just so suspiciously close to Fred Bear. And yet, there are 2 key details that we're gonna have to justify with any mediocre melodies mention. One, they're very rudimentary with external battery packs, implying that they come very early in the timeline. And 2, we know that at minimum,
Sure.
Mr. Hippo does eventually become an official member of the extended Freddyverse. But if these things are supposed to be cheap, generic rip-offs, why would you be trying to rip off yourself? You wouldn't. You would be stealing someone else's ideas. So if Afton created Fredbear, there would have to be some rival franchise. The only other person who would likely be ripping him off? Henry. We've talked extensively about how the mediocre melodies are clearly Henry's design aesthetic, so it just has to be him. I don't think Henry's doing this maliciously. He doesn't strike me as the type. He was likely building the robots at the orders of someone else that was running a rival restaurant franchise. But that's enough
Possibly.
motivation to start Afton down a path of jealous rivalry, but also begrudging admiration. As the Freddy Files Ultimate Edition says, it's important to revisit the beginning of Henry and William's relationship, so here you go. I think this is where it begins. Also, this is future Matt Pat here coming back
Okay.
to add this one in. Seems like the recently released character encyclopedia has backed up all of this speculation. I've had this timeline written for about a month now, but I've also been holding off a bit to see what wrenches this character encyclopedia might throw into it. And on this particular point, I gotta say, it seems like we might actually have nailed it. They actively call out the suspicious similarities to the main Fredbear crew. Quote
the
from one of the
off-brand bear.
pages, Ned Bear looks like an imitation, altered just enough to avoid copyright issues. I don't know about you, but that seems to imply that we were right on the money. Knowing all of this, at one point the franchises had to have merged. That's really the only way that you get Mr. Hippo from the rival franchise as part of the Fazbear crew. This also mirrors a lot of what happened in the real-life history of Chuck E. Cheese, with two rival restaurants, each with their own casts of characters, merging to become one unified brand. Again, we've gone into that in detail with other videos, just wanted to remind you all of that here.
That's more, that's scarier than FNAF.
Being named Chica's Party World. Few things, actually. First, we know for a fact that a location named Chica's Party World exists. It is mentioned in the source code teasing sister location, so it is out there somewhere and doesn't fit cleanly anywhere. Second, in the story of the Puppet Carver, Chica is very explicitly looped in with the book versions of Pig Patch and Ned Bear, implying that she started as a mediocre melody. Thirdly, her design just fits better with a theme of down-home country animals with southern accents playing the banjo and eating with bibs. And with her being the headliner of the show with her name on the restaurant, it would make sense then that when the restaurants merged, she was the one that was added to the main cast of characters while all the other mediocres faded away. It's also why when Freddy's closes after William's killing spree, she's the one to branch back off into her old franchise and is therefore missing in sister location. A detail that's bothered me for years at this point. It might also explain why William decided to stuff his first dead kid into Chica. That one was Henry's creation, not his. Is all of this a big leap? Yeah. Is it connecting a lot of dots that are very spread out across the franchise that I've been holding on in the back of my mind for years? Absolutely. But I think it makes sense. It also serves as
FNAF
a
at this point.
a lot of the random threads that Scott's been leaving dangling for years. So with all of that in mind, my friends, we can close the book on the foundation of Freddy's. And don't worry, next week I'll be back to give you arguably one of the most confusing parts of this entire timeline situation.
Yes, that gets me excited.
It will actually be next week this time. No more waiting around. I am just as eager to get this one out the door as you are to watch it. I promise. You know what else I promise? I promise that we'll actually get to talking about the games. I would have liked to have talked about them in this episode, but there just isn't that much in the games that helps us depict anything pre-Family Diner. Although, let's be honest, this franchise has never been just about the games anyway. Even back in the early days of FNAF, we were decoding images and source code that Scott fed us through the website. The modern day books and the clues that we get from those things, now they're just modern extensions of that. All of it is crucial to understanding this franchise and its lore. Unless, of course, Steel Wolf finally gets around to making that Fredbear's Family Diner game they want to make so badly.
I've always would love to do is get kind of back to... I have no clue if we'll ever be able to do this, but getting back to kind
what if someone like Naughty Dog or like a huge AAA gaming company like Bethesda is not a good example anymore, but something like that will make a game. FNAF game.
Helps to fill in some of those gaps. I'm excited to share part 2 with you next week. If you haven't subscribed and rang the bell,
like
make sure
Rockstar
you do it now
will make
so you're notified when
FNAF game,
drops.
like open
I cannot
world.
wait to see your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, I remind you, it's all just a theory. A game theory. Go easy on me. Tried my best.
I couldn't stop without hearing him saying a game theory like that. Ooh, got me excited. Got me heated. Anyway. A food theory? I don't care. Let's Chuck E. Cheese. Oops. But yeah, depending on the reception of this reaction, I can do more. I can't do less, but I can do more. On this. When did it come out? February. Oh, there it is. So is the next one The Rise of Afton? And then Burn Them All? And then A Family Rebuild. I think that's the order. And this one is they're not much longer, but the first one is the shortest. So it is 4 videos, okay. He was talking about 3, but I guess there was more content than he expected or was able to show more than he originally thought he can. And that turned into 4 videos instead of 3. Or something like that. I don't know. I haven't seen them yet. Get off my fucking back. But yeah, I would love to watch more of this. And if you can make reactions out of this, out of instead of watching it just myself for fun. Who needs fun? Maybe I can get 2 cents if I watch this as a reaction. Anyway, yeah, I enjoyed this. I want to watch more. I would love to hear what if I should or shouldn't from you, the viewers. But for now, thank you, everybody who watched this. I appreciate it a lot. I hope to see you next time, and goodbye. Have a great life, because one of us has to.